first century on how certain Christians lived their lives. He did not think that Jesus was who he claimed to be. An act of crucifixion. This idea, of course, is something that is taught to us. In Islam, it may be found in the Quran, and I want to read a section from an essential book. Influential early Christian bishop at his time. His name is Ignatius, but everyone calls him John. The building is the Church of St. Ignatius of Antioch. And he died a martyr even though he was sent to his death. To Rome, reportedly to be devoured by lions there. In addition to being en route from Antioch to Rome, a vast Roman city that existed in antiquity. World, well, we scarcely recognize it in this day and age. It may be found in contemporary Turkey, namely in the 7 letters when he traveled to Rome. And one of them reveals information to us on the ideas held by specific individuals that Jesus did not exist. So, this man, as I've mentioned before, was a bishop of the 1st century. He became the 2nd. Or 3rd, after Peter, if one were to believe certain accounts. Sources, and he was one of the first babies born in the 1930s. AD, which means that it was around that time when Jesus departed. The event, which meant that his existence overlapped even with some of Jesus' followers, such as Peter, James, and John. The example of his brother James comes to mind here, Jesus. James, the brother who served as the leader of the church in Jerusalem, and he would occasionally return here. To him in a moment. In the meantime, let's talk about something else. Please refer back to the letter that was uncovered. Early Christian works are included here in this volume. Published by Penguin Classics and considered among the most prestigious. His letters are titled Letter to the and to the Magnesium Sulfate. And finally, in chapter 9. As I was reading the paragraph, it says, and after that. I'll make an effort to break it down a little bit since it isn't usually particularly evident to modern audiences. Ears to what he may be saying, he states that we have witnessed how formerly devout members of the ancient practices have developed into current norms. Fresh hope. He is referring to those individuals who convert from Judaism to Christianity. In point of fact, to the extent that they have given up observing the Sabbath, for these righteous individuals have renounced the practice of keeping the Sabbath, and now they should arrange their lives according to the Lord's Day. Instead, we are observing the Lord's Day today in the Sunday is the primary day in the Christian calendar, rather than on Saturday, hence they changed it to the Christian faith from the Jewish faith, the calendar. Every once in a while, he talks about the day when life's first light broke for us due to his efforts, meaning Jesus Christ and his crucifixion. That death, even though Ignatius claims it, some refute the assertion. It is the very mystery that is responsible for moving us to adopt the position of believers in that short term. Mentions those that some people claim he is not aware of. Individuals who identify themselves as Christians in the 1st century who dispute the historical existence of Jesus, killed by being nailed to a cross, and as I've said before, this is a faith found, of course, in Islam, specifically in the. This is a very significant first for the Quran. Testimony given in the 21st century by one Christian. Famous Christian, a believer who is concerned about other Christians who did not concur with what was being said. Ignatius, at this point Ignatius, of course, criticizes. These individuals are not relevant to my topic, The important thing is that they did exist, and this is proof of their existence originating from a influential Christian source, hence, this is the. To begin, there is a somewhat fascinating fact associated with it. In all seriousness, isn't it the case that these believers did exist? The Quran makes it quite clear that they do. Jesus was not put to death by a crucifixion, yet here we are. Proof that Christians lived in the 1st century. Additionally, many did not accept that Jesus was horrifically executed via crucifixion on a cross that, because it may have seemed like he was based on the teachings of the Quran, but in reality, God rescued him. He saved him by some magical means from his adversaries, just as Jesus did from his. Prayed to God, by the teachings of the Gospels, that he would be saved, and God made good on his promise. His prayer, which needed to be said. Plausible viewpoint from Muslims, in my opinion. Therefore, the second point I'd want to make has to do with one of the most fascinating paradoxes in all of human history. Again, this is connected to the account of the phenomenon Christianity, which brings us full circle to Ignatius of Antioch, a second time Ignatius of Antioch, a bishop, most likely the second or third one. Following Peter, some early accounts, according to the archival material. A pretty well-known person who is still around today. Commemorated in the rituals of the Christian religion. In the Orthodox Church as it stands now, the Catholic Church, amongst others. In it, he makes a fascinating statement. The same letter, which belongs to Iglesias. A letter sent to the Magnesians, located in section. This chapter is referred to as number 10 in the book. In addition to that, I'm going to read what he has to say, and after that, I'm going, and this is with a big smile. It is one of the best things I've ever seen. The ironies that global history has in store. Moreover, he instructs the individuals to whom he is writing to claim to follow Jesus Christ while at the same time continuing to observing Jewish rituals is an exercise in absurdity for him. Says, the Christian religion does not place any importance on Judaism, even though Judaism looks to the Christian faith, in which every other language and race is present, that openly acknowledges their faith in God is one who has, at this point, been understood. Now, the fact that I want to concentrate on is this crystallized understanding that becoming a Christian is for. Indeed, you do not follow Ignatius. It would be utterly ludicrous for Judaism to permit such behavior. Judaism is not an inspiration for those who follow the Christian faith. Tell me why this is ironic, since I believe it's an incredible irony, perhaps one of the greatest ironies in the history of the world, as I will now show why because of Jesus. Even according to the Christian interpretation of his Gospels, and I consider this book to be the New Testament, updated standard version, which is the current version. The level of excellence in terms of translations. According to the many academic interpretations of the Bible. Group of people. In the book of Matthew, Jesus is quoted as having said, a great deal of fascinating information on the Jewish people, the law concerning Jewish practices, and other aspects for. As an illustration, the first chapter of Matthew 23. For passages in the Bible in which Jesus condemns things. Scribes and Pharisees are the people in question. People who were Jewish first, of course, and then Jesus said to the crowds of people and his followers. To put it another way, the scribes and the Pharisees are seated there. On the seat of Moses. This is an authoritative source for teaching the law. If you sit in Moses' seat, you will hear this statement. You are both a and an in both senses of the word. Consequently, according to the teacher of the law, Jesus. Whatever it is that they tell you to do, but don't, and do as he says to do so, but don't do it. As they are, even though they do not follow what they give a sermon, they bind hearts with hefty shackles for us to endure, and place the burden of their completion on the shoulders of others. But they are unable to overcome their resistance. To move them, you need only lift a finger, and so on. That is the first point that is intriguing, therefore. Jesus is instructing his disciples to follow his commands. The 613 commandments that make up Jewish law. Admonitions bestowed on people by God himself. You can undoubtedly see Moses on top of Mount Sinai. You may get more information on this in the book of Exodus. This is the Torah, the text of instructions. The instruction in the law that God provided to Moses. As I was saying, Jesus is now instructing his disciples. Those who are the people who occupy the throne of Moses. Follow the instructions exactly as they are given to you. But you shouldn't follow in their footsteps since they're wrong. First and foremost, hypocrites are guilty of. Secondly, evidence suggests that this is the same. 23 of the book of Matthew, Woe to ye Pharisees! Hypocrites who scribe the Bible. Take a tenth of the mint, dill, and cumin for you. They have failed to address the most critical aspects of the law. Justice and mercy are all part of it. It would be best if you had been practicing these by now. Without ignoring the significance of the others. Without neglecting the importance of the others. Got to rearrange your priorities, and you've got to have experience in legal practice, which is weightier. Issues about the law, justice, mercy, and faith. However, it would be best if you didn't ignore the additional concerns regarding the law, which means that the law itself must be observed, is not being revoked and, in fact, already exists in the sermon, often known as the incredibly well-known Sermon on Matthew's account of the Mount in chapter 5. Near the end of verse 17, Jesus speaks to his disciples. The disciples do not believe that they have arrived at get rid of the law, nay, get rid of the law altogether. Until both heaven and earth have entirely disappeared, not one, little more than a jot or a tittle will remain of the law, which means that the law itself must still be obeyed. Although according to how Jesus understood it at the time, is hence the refocused attention on compassion and love and faith, love for one another, love for one's neighbor. Such, but the legislation itself is not included in that. Gotten rid of. That is rather fascinating, wouldn't you say? Don't forget what Iglesia had to say. The early Christian community is presented to us here. Books written to proclaim faith in Jesus Christ while maintaining a Jewish religious practice. The Christian community is absurdly preoccupied with customs. The Christian faith is not based on Judaism, but instead on remembering the past. Judaism looks to Christianity. Jesus was encouraging his followers to engage in the practice of the Torah is what Jewish people follow, even if today's Orthodox Jews unquestionably adhere to try and do your best to follow in our footsteps. The instructions given by God, which can be found in the Torah, exemplifies the Jewish religion. But what about the church in its earliest days? If we then turn our attention once more to the book of Acts, in the trustworthy red Bible that I have here, who now serves as the leader of the church? Now, of course, Catholics will tell you this, but Peter, sometimes known as Saint Peter, was the first pope. I'm curious, what does the Bible have to say about? The book of Acts is a book that comes following the Gospels are essentially an account of their history. The earliest record of the church is primarily comprised of revolving around Paul. In reality, has more to do with Paul's deeds than anything else. The Acts of the Apostles. Hey, look at it this way. However, it reveals to us almost unconsciously that it makes several allusions to the fact that the inferno of the church in Jerusalem was a guy who went by the name of James. Why should we care about him, since all of our, according to the evidence found in the Bible and other? Additionally, I independently attested several sources. Evidence from a variety of sources that James was not only he was Jesus' brother, and he was the first apostle. He was the bishop of Jerusalem, and he led the church there. Was it that he was appointed, or did he win the election? According to the particular sources of the other, Peter and John, the apostles themselves, were responsible for, as an example, Peter and a few other individuals were appointed him as their head of state. Why is this important? What impact does it have on our? Several sources describe the religion of James. Who was he, and what exactly did he accomplish? According to our many religious texts, he was a valuable currency, a devout Jew, and not merely a Jew in name only like Paul, who held contrasting points of view about the law, yet he upheld the law and acted accordingly throughout the duration of. As an illustration, in the book of Acts, chapter 21, there is a narrative in which the Apostle Paul makes a visit Jerusalem as seen by James. Furthermore, in this passage, verse 18, it states that the following day Paul accompanied us on our trip to see James, and there was a gathering of all the elders, so James, the leader of the church as well as his advisors, his mature adults. And after that, Paul made a few statements, but the critical thing to remember is that when then they told him about James and the other elders then told Paul this, as you can see here. How many hundreds of thousands of believers are there in total? Are counted among the Jewish people, and they all zealous for the law, every one of them is passionate by the law, so they are individuals who are entering the church to meet with Jesus. Movement, in addition to the extraordinary aspects of what it is that makes James select them out specifically for their enthusiasm, their zealousness, their passion, and their awe and reverence for the Torah possessed. Because then, this is after Jesus departed from the scene is the early church of the location. This is the scene of, to be sure. Now, what makes this noteworthy is the fact that Paul has been accused, according to the claims of some individuals. Actions 21, which accuse you of having taught erroneous things to others about the legislation that tells individuals they can't do something. To abandon, you must obey the rule of Moses. According to Moses, it states, to forego the practice of circumcision with their offspring not to behave according to the traditions of the Jews. James reveals the answer to the question in verse 22. Done individuals will undoubtedly become aware of what you have to say, have arrived, and as a result, we must inform you that we have. These are joined by 4 guys who have taken a pledge. James, according to the men, should travel via the rite of cleansing with them and contributing to the cost of by shaving their heads, therefore, everyone will. You should be aware that what you say has no merit. There is nothing in what they have been. There is nothing in what they have been told about you, except the fact that you should make sure to follow and protect the law. Hence, he will be attending bear witness as a guest. Because, contrary to what one may have heard, one should not give up. He has turned his back on Moses, teaching him to disregard the legal system. Oh no, oh terrible. Oh yeah. Paul protects and upholds the law in every way. After that, the text reveals that Paul took the guys. This is verse 26. Once they have been cleaned, he went into the temple along with the other people. Announcement to the public of the passing of the days. For the sake of cleansing when the sacrifice would take place. Quote unquote be produced for every one of them. The verse number is 20 and 26. What exactly is the significance of this? This is significant, since, according to actions, even Paul behaves as though proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he is a stickler for the law. I'm sorry, but I don't see an issue at this point, because of what we have learned from Paul's letters here. Just like Paul did with the Galatians and Ephesians, claimed that the legislation was no longer in effect if you look up verse 15 in Ephesians chapter 2 on your own. Paul asserts that God's law and his commandments should be followed. Has been done away with. Is Paul lying to us about this in the book of Acts? When someone lies, they are showing themselves to be untrue. Witness, although it would appear that he is, this is not just deceiving James with false information, because he has been requested to carry out the unique privilege of being cleansed inside the temple. He has prepared himself to be presented to God. Whether one considers the events in this section to be historical, I can't say for sure one way or the other because one of the witnesses gave a misleading account. Involved here, Paul instructed that you were able to consume kosher food. For instance, you would be able to eat I'm sorry, you would be able to consume food. This does not comply with the kosher dietary laws. He, for instance, claimed that you are allowed to consume ham. That. Because breaking the law is against the law, there is difficulties over there, hence, here is the early church. James was quite pleased to tell Paul about it. Concerning these Jewish people who are committed to the law, we are aware that James himself served as head of the church through the AD 60s and up till the temple had a prominent reputation until it was razed. According to the writings of Josephus among the Jews, the Jewish historian, for instance, in the context of he said that James was alive in the 1st century, renowned for his zealous devotion to the law among the Jews themselves, and we are aware of this fact from the writings of other authors like Eusebius and U.H. that Hesepicus, who lived in the 2nd century, etc., James was recognized for his observance of the Torah in the. Since it is already June, this was the religion of the early. They identified themselves as members of the Christian community. Jews. Ignatius is the next person on our list, of course. Of Antioch, who mutters something near the conclusion, since the beginning of his existence, given that he was born in. Beginning in his 30s and continuing till the end of his life. According to him, the Christian religion does not place any importance on Judaism, but don't follow its tenets. You can tell that we follow the Christian faith. Irony in this situation, the irony here is that the religion associated with Jesus, the confidence he followed. Personal brother James, who served as the leader of the church. Judaism, as we know it now, was the religion in question. The religion practiced in Israel. Ignatius warns his followers not to adhere to that faith. Choose a divergent route. Judaism and Christianity both. The term Christianity that we use is discovered within these walls. The note that may be found in this book is the very first instance of the time ever being used in the history of world literature. This is the first occurrence of the word Christianity in any context. Literature, and with that, I present to you a new religion that is being loudly and publicly espoused by Ignatius on the path to his death as a martyr and an unequivocal refutation of James's religious beliefs concerning the faith associated with Jesus. 23 of Matthew. Write with what Jesus instructs his followers to do, there. Pay attention to what those occupying Moses' seat have to say. Anything they tell you, whatever they say, teach and obey it, but don't behave in the same way as they do. Because they are hypocrites, let this be a reminder to you. They are Jews, they are Israelites, and they are Israelites. Observance of the Torah. Ignatius warns against doing it. We know that it is fascinating to see how the new church is evolving in the Church of the Gentiles. Ignatius was a member of the Gentile church. The entire path of action. Faith's mother denounces the religion practiced by Christians, namely Judaism, states that they disregard what they're doing since they're following what would appear to be a distinct religion from that of the teachings of the apostles, as well as those of Jesus himself. You see my point when I remark that this is ironic. And here's hoping that it's one of the fantastic ones. The ironies of history include the fact that the latter, Christianity on the rise, asserts Jesus as its center as the company's founder, discarded even the faith it was founded on. The originator was entirely opposed to the idea expressly, and this becomes clear to us very quickly. Even a Christian authority figure is still physically present over most of the 1st century, which is remarkable. It's up there with the best. I believe that history is complete of enormous ironies, and in passing, I should mention that he is now testifying the reality that there are Christians who do not communicate their conviction that Jesus was an act of crucifixion. I subscribe to the view that Jesus was not crucified. It is clarified very specifically in the beliefs. The Quran does not invent any of its ideas. This development didn't take place until the 6th century. I guess I should say that I support you in that. First Christians of the 1st century, maintained that Jesus had no crucifixion. Only God is aware of the whole truth. And based on the views that we have concerning if it's in the Quran, we'll consider that evidence. Hence, this is the conclusion of my film regarding the biggest irony in religious studies occurs every hour. In the past, as well as a witness from the very beginning of the 1st century, from a new church that adheres to the Trinitarian doctrine regarding the failure to crucify Jesus on the cross on the contradictive viewpoint that is articulated in the Quran. We may meet again in the future.